I knew he was to come and talk about Kilishall and Clonanese, and since Clonanese is partly in the civil parish of Carnteal, we can have a bit of that too. Now, Kilishall appears to mean the lowly or low-lying church. There's a reference to a church of this name in 1257 in the Annals of Ulster, but I think it's actually a church somewhere else. I'm not at all sure whether it is being called lowly because it is, this is a Christian virtue, or whether because it actually is low-lying. I think it's true, isn't it, that now it's become what a lot of medieval church sites have become, sort of with the graveyard built up, so you wouldn't any longer think of it as low. Anne Hamlin's article on the churches of Tyrone and Tyrone history and society tells you quite a lot about the different parish church sites and how old they are. I mentioned them at the beginning. In 1306, the church at Kilishall was written down by the in fact, this is a document listing the parishes of Ireland as known about by the Pope. So I don't think the Pope didn't take an interest, although Ireland was far away. And it was written down as a Kilishall. And clearly, from the Irish language form I've given you at the top, what was being written there, just like the place name The Moy, they got the in as well. So a Kilishall is the lowly church. Kilishall, we shall see on the 1609 map, has two churches in it, and we'll talk more about that later. I was intrigued that it's got this Sessia na Shi next to it in 1609. I've no idea what's become of that land unit. That would have meant the Sessia, which was smaller than a townland per se, of the Fairy Hill. So somewhere there must be a little hill with the tradition of the fairies. However, I realised from looking at the colours on the map in more detail, it wasn't church land. Sometimes places that had a mythological significance way back in pagan times got brought into church ownership, but it doesn't seem to have happened there. Notice in that spelling of Kilishall I've given you, where I put +2 ch's, which means churches in my shorthand, there's a capital I. Now this is intriguing because quite often the plantation writers down of Irish names got sort of bees in their bonnets about what the Irish probably meant. And in this case I think they were wrong, but it's interesting what they thought. That capital I think stands for the genitive of an Irish surname beginning O, which goes in Irish, if you're meaning the church of a family of O something, it will go Kil-E. And the O'Shiels, who were actually, the personal name is mentioned in Carnteal, were often a family that looked after church lands. There were these families in medieval Ireland whose job it was to farm the land owned by the church and give part of the profit they made to the church for the upkeep of the buildings and for the living, the livelihood of the clergyman. Quite often they actually produced clergy themselves, but they had a certain sort of churchy status in society. So clearly somebody thinks, or thought in 1609, that Kilishall was the church of the O'Shiels, even though I don't think that's true.
Shall we say one of the more influential families in the O'Neill times, the O'Shiels?
Yeah, but they were supposed to have come from the Midlands, from Mullingar, that family.
Right. But the Altmore House used to be a hotel there, was the homestead of the Shields. Pat said they came originally from Mullingar. Whether there's a local connection with that, I don't know.
No, well, I mean, it's sort of interesting when you get these families, they tend to pop up all over the place, whereas the sort of the secular families, connected to the local chieftain, stay in the same place.
Yes.
The church families migrate to different churches where, we need a good person to look after this bit of church land. And I met them first of all in the middle of Down. I think it's the parish of Annaclone in County Down. And like a number of these church families, they were learned, they were educated, and they could actually turn their hands or their interests to all sorts of things. And sometimes they're mentioned as doctors as well. I mean, medical doctors as well as sort of learned in the church. Anyway, Carnteal then, the name is Shiel's Carn. Now that is Shiel as a personal name. O'Shiel means descendant of Shiel. And it is actually mentioned in 1239 because of a battle. Now you can see Montaloni there, I can see you can see Strabane with a St George's cross sticking up. Weirmore, can you see Duncan? I'm going to trip over the thing. Can you see next to the mountains, which is basically Bruger and the going on up, you can see Dungannon and you can see a little red castle, yeah? And then below it you can see the Loti, which is actually O'Neill's Loti, his household retinue, turned into a place name because that's where they lived, and that is the O'Donoghus. And I think we'll find that there are one or two smaller districts there which we can't really read very well. You can see Armagh a little further down with towers, and you can see some of the Armagh baronies, Tirani and Tuahi, which isn't a barony now. The baronies were the sort of major subdivisions of a county. Anyway, I've not got exactly what I wanted, but in 1239, Carnteal gets mentioned as the site of a battle that Dovnall MacLachlan gave. I haven't recorded there who he gave it to. Interesting that the parish was actually mentioned as the site of the battle. But I think because the churches were well known, this happens. And I think I've said to someone already this evening that the townland of Grange, as you come into Hawley on the main road, it's just on your right and you can see the river across from you, that actually was the site of a church. It was one of the churches called Kilmore, Big Church, of which there are quite a number in Ireland, but there weren't at this early period. And that actually was the site of a major battle in 827. And the church is long gone, but that was church land and there was a church there. And clearly the parish churches or the churches were regarded as landmarks. I mean, you hope that they didn't have the battle right over the church, but it was a place that they could mention. And I think that what you're actually getting in both of those cases is the main road as we have it now. This is the way that an invading force would come. And in the case of the one at Grange, the Grange was called Moyenna, which I think probably means plain of the standing stone, but there's no standing stone there now. This was a battle between the people in the east and people coming up the Clogher Valley. So, you very often find battle sites on routeways because that's where bodies of men have to come. We then get in 1306 in this taxation by the Pope and this list of Irish parishes and what they were due to pay to the Universal Church. You've got the name spelt Carmerskel. Now, M's and N's, they're always getting muddled up. You probably find it difficult in people's handwriting, or maybe this document too. It's always happening, so it's not surprising. These are people writing in the Vatican, I suppose, and they don't know that it's an Irish name or what it means, so it's in a muddle. However, if you look at the 1431 spelling on your handout, you will see that that is actually pretty close to the way that I have spelt the Irish at the top, especially if you take into account that Shiel did once have a sheergul, a sound in the middle of it, not just Shiel. Carnteal is slightly odd, why we should have this T knocking out the S in pronunciation, but you see by 1609 that had happened. On the map, though, which we shall see bits of, the place is not called Carnteal, but called Ballintemple, the townland of the church. So this is quite often what you get. If you think of a parish, it's quite a big area. Sometimes there's a townland in the parish called the parish name, and this can vary at different times. Sometimes there isn't, but where the church is probably where the name refers to. So I don't think we've had a cairn, a stone heap there for a long time. 1643, we've got it as Champel Carn Teal, with that T still. And there's a famous traditional song found in Donegal and all over in Irish called Shachran Carn Teal. It has a whole lot of place names in from the person wandering about the country. So that's a little bit on.
I think, I think the T is an Irish prefix, a bit like O and Mac.
Yeah, it's not terribly grammatical here. It is indeed. Yes. I mean, you'll get another example a bit later on of a T prefix to an
I think
S.
that is genitive. It's a genitive form of the word, so that it's off shield. In other words, TS meaning off shield.
Yes, I think that's what they mean by it.
Yes.
It wouldn't have been regular in the earlier grammar, nor is it completely regular later, but I think you're quite right that that's what they mean by it. But if you notice, the earlier spellings we have there, we don't have it. It's come in. It's a sort of, just like in English, grammar changes, and so that has come in. You can see the blocks that he's showing, which are different territories, and these have their names. Now, I don't know if I can read it any better on the map than I can on here. I can see Glencon. Yes, you can see Glencon Keen up here in sort of a greenish colour. At any rate, this is quite clearly the way that he saw the landscape, Bartlett saw the landscape he was coming into. At this scale, you couldn't show all the townlands, but what he's picking up are these native districts. Now, rather strangely, and I still have not got to the bottom of this, these are not the same as the parishes. These are aggregates of townlands under one chieftain, usually, with a particular name. And quite clearly important, when we get onto the townland maps of the 17th century like this, they're still using them. They're showing the breakdown of townlands within those districts. Oh, sorry, can you see where this is? I mean, there's Loch Ney in the middle there. I think it's not coming up well enough to see. Actually, there is Clonanese. Yes, I want you almost going to that. Can you see it's got a little bit of a wood in the middle? No, it's just laying a pin there. It's a white patch in the middle of the yellow, just above 1602. That's it, there, yes. And I was going to point out that it's interesting that it is there and quite big, whereas quite a lot of the other district names aren't, so it's clearly an important one. Another thing that I think you can see from this map, though John Andrews, the famous map historian, tells me off a little bit for this. He says the maps weren't that accurate anyway. But do you see that great big opening in the northwest of Loch Ney? Now that is actually taking in the Loch Beg that's up there, that has what on earth do they call it? The island, Inishtidia, it is in Irish. But that area, before Loch Ney was drained, that area used to regularly flood in winter. Even in the 1830s, people living opposite Toon would have their houses flooded and they'd have to go from farmhouse to farmhouse by boats. And I think probably it's a mixture, A, of inaccuracy, and B, of having perhaps been there, seen it in the winter, and not realised that in drier times it actually looks more like two lochs than one. Now this is the same Bartlett's general map of Ulster, and again you're getting that impression with his colouring of the different districts. He isn't actually colouring every district separately. Clonanese is still here. I mean, it's very closely related to that other one. This time it's white in the middle of the yellow again. Here's Clocher here, and Ocher, the castles. Closser, another district name there.
What's
It's Glen, it's called Glenconqueen, yes.
That's Connolly there.
Now, I can't see the name.
Down of Muhr here.
Yes, that's all done of Muhr there.
And obviously there's a church here which I think must obviously be, that must be Calicious.
No, I think Calicious should be down. I can read the word Carntiel actually, south of Clonanese. That red church is called Carntiel, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
That's Down of Muhr church there.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. And next to where you had your finger there, can anybody see that there's a thing looking like a poached egg?
Yes.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a crannog. That is an island in its loch. So that is the crannog that we were talking about. So any time you spot them on the map, and they're all over the place.
It is actually Donnelly's Crannog because it says it here.
Does it?
It does. Of O'Donnell,
Yeah.
O'Donnell.
Right, okay, yes, well that's, yes, loch, I think it says loch.
Yes, it says loch.
Loch and fort, is it, O'Donnell?
O'Donnell, yeah.
Yeah, so there you are.
That's the Crannog pot. Yeah.
There's a few more, if you can see where Dungannon is, above it.
Yeah.
North of that, there's the crannog at Rochen, I think.
Rochen, here, yes.
There's Rochen and Stochen, isn't there? I think they both have crannogs.
Yes.
And then there's one at the head of the river, which I haven't identified.
This one.
It calls itself Loch Desert Crete, or Loch Desert.
That's right.
And we're not sure whether it's found the screen, which is a de-shaded desert as well, or
I
where
think that's a Prince Cookstown, isn't it?
This
Generally,
Crete ought to be near, I mean, if it is Desert Crete, he's in a muddle, he should have it further down.